Welcome. Today we are going to talk about crisis reactions, psychosocial support and school adjustment. My name is Belinda Ekornås and I'm a researcher and a clinical psychologist at the Norwegian Center for Studies on Traumatic Stress. And today with me I have my colleague.
Hello, my name is Lars Lyster and I'm also a clinical psychologist from the Regional Center on Traumatic Stress and Suicide Prevention.
When we talk about psychosocial support in a crisis, you as a teacher have a very important job and role, because it's important for the pupils to feel that they have some normalcy and routines which they can uphold in this crisis. And this is important for a feeling of belonging and social community, which you have in the class, both digitally and if you meet physically. And also it's important to have learning, to develop, because you're a child in an important developmental phase. Also, as a teacher, you can contribute to their regulation, which can help their concentration and their learning. And also, to be part of a school class can make the children feel a sense of security, which is very important in a crisis. It's also important for the self-respect and the self-worth for young people in a crisis. Lars.
And I'm going to talk to you very short about crisis reactions. And it's very important to know that in a situation like this, all reactions are normal. We're not talking about symptoms, but we're talking about reactions here and now to a situation that is not normal, not for adults and not for children. And what we often see is difficulties sleeping. It might be nightmares, it might be problems falling asleep or waking up too easily. We can see it in how we eat and digest our food. Someone might eat more than they normally do, or some kids might lose their appetite completely. And pupils and kids might have somatic complaints. They might have stomachache, they might have headaches, and it might be difficult for some children to trust peers and trust maybe the teachers and adults as well. And when it comes to behavior, you can see a wide range of different behaviors, everything from clinging behavior to a parent or to a teacher as well, withdrawal, avoidance, behavioral problems at school, at home, and they might show a lack of interest. And the same when it comes to emotions, you can see a whole wide range of different emotions, and it's normal. They might be afraid, might be overwhelmed, some might be irritated, some might not show that many emotions or behavior, but that's normal as well. And it's also normal that some kids feel guilty or feel shame. They might think that they are responsible for suffering. They might feel responsible for what happened to parents, to peers, to others. And that's a thing we also need to address, and it is normal. And what are the basic needs of your pupils, children overall? They need to be comforted. They need to feel safe. They need to feel understood. We have to take our time to talk to them, to listen to them, so that we can support their needs. And they need someone they can rely on. They need an adult who is able to be regulated here and now, an adult that might give the safety that the child needs. And it's also very important to try to make some kind of normality in the chaos. How can you arrange normality during a war? How can you have breakfast at the same time, lunch at the same time? When you do the school sessions, even if it's digitally, how can you make a routine that says to the students that life goes on, or we say to them that this is normality even if there's a war going on?
And in a war, you of course get activated and stressed. And to prevent stress to build up, you can do different kind of strategies. Physical exercise, if that's possible, builds resilience. And as Lars mentioned, when your reactions to stress is often activation, that it can be difficult to sit still or to concentrate, and to move, to have breaks where you can move, to use controlled breathing, progressive muscle relaxation you can use, or mindfulness, simple mindfulness exercises, or cognitive strategies to try to focus here and now instead of thinking about the war. And then it can be smart not to think about the war all the time, to have sort of times where you think and talk about it, and times when you do other things. And eat and sleep and drink and rest regularly, just like Lars mentioned. To have routines. Routines makes people feel more secure. To create an open and healthy school environment where there are no wrong questions. You as a teacher know these children, and you know how to be a teacher. And that's in fact the most important task you are going to do, give psychosocial support, because you represent a safe person, something normal to the children. So rely on yourself and your instincts, because you have many things that you would do when in peacetime it's also smart to do in this situation. So rely on yourself. And that is important. Mastery, coping and meaning is important for you as a teacher, and is very important for your pupils. So your job as an educator, as a teacher, is very important, and to give psychosocial support, and the pupils to have their education is important for meaning and for the pupils. Yes, and when we talk about school adjustments, you can support your pupils' learning capacity and emotional control through adjustments. For example, because their concentration is lacking, you can use short messages, you can use mind maps, maybe they can listen to audiobooks, and you can use strategies that help them organize the material they are going to learn. Also, another thing that's very important is predictability. So present a plan for the day when you start the day, and provide notice if you are going to change anything in advance. So the pupil can feel safe and know what they are going to do that school day. Regulation is very important. And you can regulate the body and activation with breaks. You can have more often breaks, and you can encourage your pupils to move in the breaks, which will help them regulate the activity in the body. And also relaxation and breathing techniques is possible to use to regulate. And it can be smart to have breathing exercises before new material that will focus and help your pupils concentrate. You can also give choice and strategies to the pupils and have clear, precise messages. So children in a crisis need some school adjustment or adaptation, and they don't need wait and see. So just start doing these things.
This next slide is an example from adults who have survived and experienced crisis and catastrophes. When you look through the different quotes given by teenagers, adolescents, you will see that their needs, what they want from us adults, are normal needs. You don't have to be an expert to be able to show empathy, to be clear and concise, to be honest, to be able to actually have to have humor in a situation when it's really dark. And we're not going to go through all of them, but just look through them, because you are, for some of these kids, extremely important. And you don't need a psychologist, the kids don't need a psychiatrist, they need a safe adult they trust. And that can show to the kids that it's okay to talk about anything, and what you feel and what you experience is a normal reaction. And this is to all you teachers, all you adults, the kids as well, of course. It's not a question if you get affected by the war, the situation you are in, because you are all affected. The question is, what can you do about it?
Yes, that's correct, Lars. And you as a teacher can do something for yourself. You can recognize your own emotions. It's normal to feel overwhelmed, to feel helpless, to feel lack of control. That doesn't mean that you're not professional or that something is wrong with you. That just means that you are a normal human being. So recognize your emotions. Do not have overly high expectations. You're not supposed to be the best teacher in the world. You're just supposed to be a safe adult and teacher. Focus on what you can influence. That helps reduce stress, because in the situation you are in now, there's a lot of things you can't change, you can't influence. But there are some things you can. So focus on what you can do in your daily life and in your role as a teacher that you have influence over. Be aware that family members will handle the crisis differently. So parents of the pupils can have different reactions than the children, and that's normal. You can have different reactions than your husband or your wife. That's normal. So that's a part of the crisis reactions. They are different for different people. Ask for help from your family and friends. Social support is important, both for you as a teacher and for your pupils. So learn how to trust each other and support each other. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Even if you're despair, the child needs to know that you're an adult. So it's fine to show emotions, but also say that you can handle them. So look after yourself, take the time you need to be sad and to rest and to heal. Parents also needs some advice, and you as a teacher may be asked from parents of your pupils, what can I do in this situation to support my child? And when parents are going to talk to their children about the war, for example, they have to try not to overreact, try to breathe and be in control, and calm themselves before they are talking to their child about what's happened. And it's important that they explain in simple terms and enough for the children to understand, but without going in detail to all the violence. So it's important that the children have a whole story, because if they get only small bits and pieces of what's happening, they will make the story themselves. And children have a lot of fantasy, and their story can be much gruesomer or worse than the reality. Children want to ask questions, and they may need repetition, so they may ask the same questions many times. That's normal. And you can also let children express emotions by playing, drawing, writing, or telling stories. But it's also important for children to feel normal and to feel like a child. So it's important that the parents set aside time to do things together that's nice in the family, that they used to do before the war. And also it's important for adults, both parents and teachers, to explain to the children that they don't need to look after them. And you as an adult can look after yourself, because children tend to want to look after their parents and adults.
And what Belinda talked about now is the importance of regulation. So it's all about regulations in a way, that you as a helper, you as a teacher have to be regulated before you try to help the child. You might have to regulate a parent as well. But to be able to do that, you have to sometimes think about yourself. You need to take these breaks when you feel overwhelmed, because the help you give when you are overactive is not that good. So set off time to heal for yourself. We have some questions from Ukrainian teachers. Some of them we hope we have shortly answered during our short talk, but we have received questions about what you actually just talked about, Belinda, how to talk about the war, how to talk about the human suffering, how to talk about the evil that is happening in the Ukraine with children. And Belinda said something about it, but I think it's really important to just repeat that they need a story. And it's important that we as an adult can talk about it without being overwhelmed. But how can we also fill in the gaps and do not end up in gory details? That's one thing. How can we try to hinder the child sometimes from being exposed to the news all the time?
And it's important, Lars, that you ask the child, what questions do you have about the war? So you know where are their mindset, where are they thinking? And also you can you go in from use different angles when you talk about it. One angle that's possible to use is to talk about the rules of engagement, that in a war there are rules, and what these rules are. For example, you shall not kill children and civilians, but also talk about sometimes the rules are broken, and that's not allowed. That's criminal to do, and this is one angle to talk about it. But ask the pupils what questions they have, because often the questions are very concrete, and then you can answer the specific questions.
And of course, the different ages will differ when it comes to what do they need, what kind of information do they need, and what kind of support do they need. So to be able to be regulated and a good helper, as Belinda just said, how to invite the child in and try to investigate what are your thoughts, what are your feelings, before we kind of go on with what we think is helpful.
And another question we got, Lars, is how to respond to pupils' fear and anxiety. And in this situation, fear and anxiety is normal, and it's you can say that it's normal to be afraid. And you can also talk about what can be good thoughts the child can think when it's afraid. Safe thoughts that the child can focus on, because that will help reduce anxiety. Also, breathing is good for reducing anxiety, and to focus on something else. So to focus on, for example, holding your mother or father's hand can be something, or if you have a pet, or so there's many techniques you can do to manage the fear.
And of course, when it comes to alarms, sirens, airplane alarms, it's also how can we turn it around. Listening to the alarm is a good thing, because the alarm signals go and be safe somewhere else. And when there's no alarm, there's of course higher percentage of being safe. And when it comes to signals and alarms, how can you respond to it in a way that gives mastery, that gives coping? With the smaller children, we can make stories about it. But it's important then that adults show that, okay, now's the signal for us to go there. And when we enter the shelter or whatever, they know what it is, because it's important to have routines in the shelter as well, even if you're not home or outside. One question, actually many questions, were about how can I as a teacher regulate or help my students concentrate or motivate them if I have problems concentrating myself?
Yes, and that's a very good question, because in a crisis, it's not only the pupils which are in a crisis, also you as a teacher are in a crisis. And I think it's very important to think about what we talked about earlier, not to put the bar too high. You being their teacher, giving them normality, giving them something they had before the war is important in itself. And you can talk to the children about what motivates them now in this situation, because the motivation in the children, I guess, is different now than before the war. So it's possible to make a dialogue about it. What will be most important for you as a child, as a pupil now, in this situation? You can have that talk with your pupils.
And just remember, you are not Superman or you're not Superwoman. You do the best you can. And as Belinda said in the beginning, try to focus on what we can change and focus less on the factors we can't change. And just you being there, just you showing up digitally or physically gives a sense of normality and will in itself regulate the children. And this is our take-home message.
Yes. What's important in a crisis is to make a sense of control, that you can control the things you can control, and a sense of predictability. The fact that you go to school digitally or physically is makes people safe, and also it's social support in seeing your teacher and in seeing other pupils.
And all this protects us against stress. And as Belinda already has said, but we repeated the importance of trying to explain in different ways, trying to answer in different ways, even if the questions come up again and again. Try to answer the child's question. Try to give support to the parents, because if the parent is regulated, there's a bigger chance of him or her regulating their own child.
And also create small safe havens as often as possible. You can do it in your teaching. Create a space where you talk about something that's memories or things you want to do when the war is over. You create this safe place. And also for yourself. It's very important that you take care of yourself and also make time to feel safe and to do things that's regulating and good for you.
And we just want to end by thanking you all for letting us have the opportunity to talk to you. And good luck, and you're doing an important job.
Yeah, very important. Thank you very much.